And we are live. Hi, my name is Tyree Simon.
Elijah Jones.
This is a special UFC 252 recap. Elijah, how are you doing, sir?
No complaints. It's looking like a little cloudy Sunday. We've had
Yeah.
sunshine yesterday, but it's cloudy. But that doesn't stop us here. Not that bad. Just working on some essay stuff for grad school. How are you?
I'm doing good. As you see, I'm outside. I have a sweater on. It's a little chilly outside. I got my
Looks
nice,
nippy. It looks nippy.
nice Dunkin' Donuts coffee here, and I'm ready to go, man.
It's breezy.
It's breezy. It's
It's breezy.
breezy.
It looks like, yeah. So the
Yeah,
trees blowing. I live on the fourth floor. I was like, oh wow.
yeah, and it's raining off and on too. So
Yeah.
kind of kind of not the best weather, but hey, I'm outside, and it's not bothering me too much.
Listen, man, get the fresh air while you can.
Yeah, we've been cooped up in the house for a while, so
Cooped up. Uh, but
dude,
yeah. Uh,
dude,
I'm glad we're healthy. We're
yeah,
looking healthy. Family's doing right. Tyrese, would you like to go ahead and give me the okay to begin? Would I begin?
I will give you the okay, sir.
You'll give me the okay. All right, you're not the master here, but all right, I'm gonna do it anyway. Last night, ladies and gentlemen, we had UFC 252 in the books. We had in the UFC Apex Center, we had Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic for a trilogy fight, the rubber match, the fight of all fights, the fight to crown the baddest man on the planet. We know throughout history, the heavyweight division of any sport, any fight combat sport, are the baddest people to fight. These are the guys who are at the stand at the apex because there's not many people who can beat them. Correct, Tyrese?
We'll talk about it later, but I think there's
Oh
one
my
guy
gosh.
at 205 that may beg to differ, and he
But
may be
but
the baddest
but
man
you
on the
but
planet.
you but you corroborate my story because I told you that at heavyweight that is the best fighter alive. That is the person who is the pound for pound person that no one can beat. So if a person from 205 jumps up to heavyweight, in theory, as a heavyweight, they are the greatest fighter in the world, are they not?
All right, you may have stumped me there. You may have stumped me there.
But Tyrese, let's not take away from what we got last night. UFC 252. We in the
Mhm.
books. We had Daniel Cormier, perhaps one of the greatest heavyweights and light heavyweights to ever grace combat sports, and Stipe Miocic, the pound for pound, the best heavyweight championship that UFC has ever seen. Last night, though, after five hard fought rounds, the victor emerged as, and still, Stipe Miocic. Tyrese, tell us your thoughts about the fight.
Um, what's a lot? There's a lot to unpack here. One of the things I did also see a lot of people, well, the UFC try to bring this narrative that this fight will determine who the greatest of all time is, or the
Mm-hmm.
greatest heavyweight of all time is. I think Stipe or DC are in the conversation as one of the best heavyweights of all time. I think you still have, Fedor in that conversation. Fabricio Verdum is in that conversation. Cain Velasquez, what he did during his tenure, is in that conversation. There's so many heavyweights. Randy Couture you can put in that conversation as well. There's so many heavyweights in the UFC has had in MMA that it's hard to say that Stipe or DC is the greatest of all time. I think they're part of that class of one of though. Um,
I think, not to
that-
interrupt you, but I think what they're defining as one, as the greatest UFC, greatest heavyweight of all time is whoever's defended with, UFC being the number one premier the sports organization for MMA.
yeah,
With the UFC being that right now, I think they're defining it as who's been able not only to fight the top of the top, but who's ever been able to defend the belt the longest
yeah,
too, right? It's the longevity. I just want to add that to what you're saying. I think that's how they're defining in this moment. That's how they're defining the greatest of all time.
yeah. But they're also saying, I think it's more DC and Stipe. They're the goat. They are the greatest of all time. And I just don't think you could where does Mighty Mouse fit in that? Where does John Jones fit in that? Where does Amanda Nunes fit in that? Where does Fedor fit in that? There's so many other people. I can't put Stipe or DC in that greatest of all time. I could put them as one of maybe top 10,
Mm-hmm.
20, but I can't put them as the greatest of all time.
It's fair.
Definitely on one of the list.
Some of the baddest men on the planet. I tell you that
Yeah,
much.
Stipe is
Some
the
of the
only
baddest
person
men.
at heavyweight to defend the title 3 times. No, he's definitely on that top five on the UFC of one of the all time greats.
He's one of the only two people to have ever beaten Daniel Cormier too.
Yeah,
That's a pretty impressive feat for a man who's only He's only lost 3 times in his career,
Yeah.
starting late too.
Yeah. And you know, he beat Fabricio Verdum, he beat GDS. And he still has a lot more years left, I think, as well. But speaking on this fight specifically, I thought this fight I totally discredited Stipe's IQ.
Yeah.
In our prediction show, which is up, you can go back and watch the archive. I said that I think DC's IQ is going to be way better than than Stipe's, and I think that Stipe is going to have a hard time adjusting for this fight, and I was totally wrong. Stipe had a great game plan. He came in a lot leaner than he ever was before. So
They both did.
233.
Yeah, they both did.
DC was 236.
Yeah.
And I thought Stipe's game plan from the minute, from the first bell, I thought was phenomenal.
I agree. I think what caused Stipe that issues in the first round of the second fight was the hesitancy. Like he hesitated a very lot, didn't get his shots off, didn't establish his jab. What was to Daniel Cormier's credit, Daniel Cormier also started landing calf kicks early. And and what Daniel Cormier likes to do is that he initiates that jab and he follows up with a calf kick, or he follows up doubles of the jab, triples the jab. So Cormier is always ending his initiations in combos. It's the combo that really counted, and that carried a lot in the second fight. But in the first round of this fight, what Stipe was able to do is start landing first. Stipe initiated a lot of those, interactions with jabs. So he went to the body early as well.
Yeah,
He started punching. Instead of punching, getting that liver shot, he also landed to the solar plexus, which also, I don't know if you've ever been punched in your chest, but it don't feel great.
No, it doesn't.
Being punched dead in the middle center here of your chest on this line here on your ribs is without a doubt one of the worst places to be punched. And that's also where you saw Stipe doing a lot of damage early. Now, with that being said, the first round was so close, and it just was it seemed to be tit for tat, DC landed a leg kick, Stipe landed a leg kick. Cormier landed a punch, Stipe landed a jab. It just seemed to be so back and forth and so close. But at the end of the first round, I will give credit to Daniel Cormier, who ended up hurting Stipe. I had Stipe winning that round, and then he hurt him, and I was like, oh damn! With I think maybe a few seconds to spare.
You know what's interesting? Like I don't like talking about just Stipe's game plan and just the adjustments he made. I don't ever remember he went to the body, punched to the body. I never remember Stipe throwing teep kicks.
Oh, you mean in his career or this fight?
Well, just in his career, I don't ever think I've ever seen Stipe throw a teep kick before.
I think what we saw in this fight is that again, remember in the review show or the preview show, sorry, that we talked about, I said the person who's going, and this is why I remain undecided, because the person who made the better adjustments is going to be the person who wins this fight. We talked about the narrative in rubber fights that the person who kind of dominates the second fight ends up going to win the third fight. Right? That's what the person who's the most dominant in one of the fights tends to win that fight. And we were torn because the second fight, DC dominated, but Stipe didn't take long for Stipe to get him out of it because he had been laying the groundwork. In this fight, I think Stipe realized it's going to take much more than some slick boxing in order to beat Cormier, because Cormier, in my opinion, has the faster hands, right? Yes. Cormier has the edge with the smaller body, with the head that can get off the center line. And just his body's big, but his head's small. And Stipe has great. His boxing is so centered around the 1-2, right? And it's good because his boxing with the 1-2, he stopped Cormier. So Cormier has to watch out for the 1-2. Cormier made the adjustment there in this fight. But what Stipe realized he had to do is he had to bring up his other tools to the team. He had to bring his other tools to work, because it takes much more than just some good boxing to beat Cormier, right? You have the wrestling pedigree, you have the striking pedigree, you have a guy who can do the jiu-jitsu. So you can't with a guy like that, you have to bring every single thing and throw it at him, as opposed to just doing one thing that you're good at, because that's not going to get the done, because the adjustments can be made by DC, which he showed in this fight too, actually, in my opinion, going into the second and third round. You saw those minor adjustments there. I think the teep kick was really smart, in my opinion.
Yes, it was.
I thought that was pretty smart, and he threw a body kick too. First round, I was like, "Whoa!" So we're striking now. We're getting off here.
He even threw a head kick. I think Stipe even threw a head kick in the
later rounds.
Yeah. It also interesting to me as well is that, we talked about in the prediction show, we talked about the octagon size and how that may lend to an advantage to DC.
Yeah.
Stipe proved his footwork as well. His ability to not keep his back against the cage, to constantly be circling around the cage, pushing forward, but also making sure that if he's putting his back to the cage, he's always so moving side to side and not standing straight against the cage. Um,
That was round
I,
two. Round two was lateral movement, just
yeah,
because you heard them yelling, "Don't sit, head up the center line, head up the center line, move lateral, lateral." I was like, wow.
yeah,
So like they prepped, they prepped.
constant footwork. There was so many adjustments in the fight as well. We talk about DC and his adjustments made. The small things he did, not putting his hands out. If you notice in the fight, when between round 1 and round 3, he did not put his hands out, which was a downfall in his last fight where he put his hands out and tried and be able to get on the inside and try to land a right hook that
Pull the hands down, yeah.
yeah,
To pull, he gets his hands out like this to pull the hands down to
yeah,
come over the top or initiate those. What was interesting in this fight, right? We talked about this in, of course, the preview show. If everyone
yeah,
go watch that before you watch this, of course. We talked about the eye pokes. We'll get to that later, of course. But in the
yes,
first round, DC had eye poke Stipe,
yeah,
and I think that with that so early in the round, right? Had that been later, I think that would have been like, all right, like it'd probably been a little different. But with that on the refs' radar so early, now
mhm,
it kind of, I think you saw in that first round, DC had to, instead of going here, he had to bring his hands to his face.
yeah.
And that, I think it's harder to fight in a range like that, and I think that was an enabled Stipe to get off a lot of those
I agree.
jabs and like to bring those combinations, because with a guy like Stipe who's bigger than you, physically longer than you, you have to kind of either get up in his chest with your head, bury your head in his chest and try to land those shots above, or
Right.
you kind of have to keep your hands out to just kind of gauge what he's going to do. And, you play the pity patty game where you kind of parrying to get, and counter. But he wasn't able to do that in the first round. And I thought that made a very, very, very big difference, because if you see Cormier's career, he's great at that.
So I think I know what you're saying. You're saying that the referee, the eye poke in the beginning of the first round, was the catalyst to him not do what he usually do. I thought from the beginning he was trying not to, but that makes also sense. If we're talking about the eye pokes and how much of that played a factor into the second fight, and then how much it was a big conversation brought up to go into this fight.
Yeah.
That makes sense that he did not. He wanted to specifically not do the eye pokes.
Think about it. Exactly. Like, think about it. So if after the eye poke, I mean, I'm gonna go back and watch this fight later today. I don't know about
Yeah,
you, brother. I know
yeah,
I know you got plans to go grub and bub with the family, but I'm gonna say hi to my mom, show my mom, and then definitely go over and watch this fight. But
right.
you're gonna notice after that first eye poke, Daniel instead of out, he
Yeah.
brings it a little more reserved. And
Mhm.
I think, it leaves him open. He's a great
Mhm.
striker, so he obviously is smart and makes the adjustment, of course. But you see that kind of it's almost like he's hesitating, because now it's like, I can't, like it's like reeling it in. You
In
see
that
the
range.
constant reeling in. And
Yeah.
that like kind of setting that tone early is kind of a mental aspect, because now it's like, now I have to be conscious of what I'm doing, and it's only round one.
Yeah.
Right? If this is
Yeah.
round 3 or 4, it's like, fuck it. Like, you might as well, going for broke. We're both tired. It is what it is. That's gonna happen. But so early kind of sets that in the back of his head. It's like, well, damn, like, I don't want to get a point taken away as soon
Got
as
it.
possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
I also think that part two to that, I also think the body shot from the last fight that also played into effect. I was gonna say the
Yeah.
hands out issue. I think DC read that if he did that, DC Stevens just goes right to the body
Yeah.
underneath.
Yeah.
So I also think that on top of what you just said, which I think is a great point to bring out, that those two issues made DC not want to put his hands out, which is usually his best advantage or against a bigger Stipe, getting on the inside and be able to hit the right hook or the left hook out of the break of a clinch.
That is, if we're looking at Daniel Cormier's career, right?
Yeah.
He's been doing this as early as, I want to say after the Mir fight, when he was at heavyweight and he started like really getting the striking down here and there.
Yeah.
He started moving past those clinches and started moving past just the wrestling and the pressure like that. When you start to see him develop his striking or utilize his striking more in certain fights, you notice that he's been doing that since the start of his career, because that's what he had to do to overcome these bigger foes.
Right.
And it's been, Tyrese, it's been successful. Why fix it if it ain't broken? You know what I mean? So I think that was a very big thing. But you're right. Like, going to the body, you can't protect yourself. There's just no way in that time you can't protect yourself that fast. So I think, again, that was a big factor too.
And we've seen, like, we're fast forwarding a little bit, but as we've seen towards the 4th and 5th round, where DC had his best round in the 4th round,
Yeah.
he actually went back to putting his hands out.
Yep.
And he was able to land a lot more on Stipe and actually won that round, in my opinion. Let's talk about the eye poke. The eye poke.
Wait, let me just get to two more things. I want to address. I did have Stipe winning round 1 until he got stumbled. That can go either way.
Yeah,
round 2 was definitely Stipe. Round 3 was definitely Stipe because we know that Cormier tends to third round kind of tone it down, and it seemed like Cormier got a second win after, I believe it was round 2 where Stipe caught him with a right hook off the fence, and he had him hurt. And then in that round 3, he stumbled back into the octagon, and then he was controlling. And you saw Stipe initiate the clinch, which was a lot smarter. When Daniel Cormier likes to get that, he gets that high collar tie, and then he goes limp, and then comes under to grab your neck from behind, and then initiates that over right. What you see is Stipe fell for that, but what Stipe started to do was start to initiate a clinch in order to neutralize that, or grab his left hand so that way it couldn't his left leg couldn't come under him with an underhook. So I think that was a very smart adjustment for this fight. But you're right, going into I think it was the end of round 3 or the beginning of round 4, there was a pretty harsh eye poke that Stipe had.
So I see people talking about the eye poke and how, first of all, it was a bad eye poke, and
it was a bad eye poke.
And the thought process of DC did it to Stipe, so it's only right that or it's fair play if Stipe does it to him.
I've been hearing that narrative.
I think that's stupid.
I think Tyrese. I'm not to cut you off, but literally all on Instagram this morning, everyone was talking about it. I was like, wow, people are like, oh, like he did it to him, so he I'm like, that there's no justification. Yeah, it's a fight. Things like that happen.
It's a foul. It's a foul. It is a foul. On both sides. If DC did it to Stipe, it'll be a foul. If Stipe did it to DC, it'll be a foul.
100%.
But I think what people may have missed was the second round in which Stipe clipped DC at the end of it, where I think DC was it's weird because I think the angle of the cage, he stumbled a little bit, and then as he's exiting out, Stipe was able to land the right hand that hurt DC and almost finished him in the second round, but he was saved by the bell. If you go back and watch the beginning of that third round, you can see DC's eyes closing up, and you see him just twitching his eye.
What a lot of people don't understand, like you said, in that round, at the end of the second round, when he caught him with the right hook, he landed perfectly. What happens with Cormier tries to exit off the cage, but he doesn't come off the cage as perpendicularly. He comes against the cage to get out. And that's what happened. And that type of exit, and with a guy who's bigger than you, who's lankier than you, what happened was Stipe was able to catch him with a right hook and dropped him. And that interaction left him stumbling to the corner. And at the beginning of that third round, which a lot of people didn't realize, that left eye was starting to look as if it started to have that wear as being jabbed. Perfect call on your part. I agree. A lot of people didn't seem to take that into consideration in that third round.
Yeah, I thought immediately when we talk about when Stipe was initiating the clinch in the third round, where it may look like he was taking a round off a little bit or trying to catch a break. You see Stipe putting DC's back against the cage. You see the camera closing up on DC's face, and you can see his eye closing up.
And you know what else? Contributed to that? So in the clinch, what a lot of people didn't realize is Stipe had his hand on his right. He had his left arm holding the right wrist of Cormier, right? So that he couldn't initiate that right over that we talked about.
Right.
In the clinch, with the knees to the thigh, Stipe also had shoulder hits. And a lot of people didn't realize in that clinch, it wasn't Conor McGregor style where he was just like, bah,
right.
You saw the clear visible damage, but a lot of people don't realize because the way he was, leaning on him and initiated that clinch and brought him to his corner, and his corner was telling him shoulder, body, so a lot of people didn't realize the work that was being done. It looked like he was holding because he's a big guy. You don't see it, but a lot of, like you said, like it was the accumulation of getting hit from the second round and that clinch work that Stipe did that had the eye swelling.
Yeah. So it's not totally the eye poke. Eye poke did play a factor into it, but Stipe did the groundwork early on in the second round, going to the third round, to where that eye was getting messed up, regardless of what happened, and the eye poke didn't make any better.
Regardless,
Yeah,
now with that being said, I don't with Mark Gardner. Mark Gardner didn't see it either, right? He didn't see this eye poke because
no,
of the angle that it happened. It
yeah.
happened with him pushing off, and then it was the end of the round anyway. What could have been done differently? I'm sorry, I just got an email.
No, it's
What could
fine.
have been done differently is I saw Hans Mullenkamp. I don't know if you know who that is. He's pretty big in the MMA world. He has
Mhm.
Triumph gloves, and he's very big friends with DC. He was saying that the eye should have been checked out, and I was like, well, that's a possibility, but if the ref didn't see it, what I don't think that's likely to have happened. What do you think about that? He's basically saying like the doctor should have came in and checked it out first, but then
So,
that leads to a potential fight ending injury.
so we're saying the third round is where the eye poke happened because I believe in the fourth round. This time, the third round was the eye poke happened in the fourth round. I think DC said, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to put my hands out, and if I touch his eye, I'm touch his eye. But I'm going to go
Fourth round,
back
he
to what
did.
I'm gonna go back to what works for me. So I believe in the third round he got his eye poked. In the fourth round, he said, you know, I'm going back to what works for me. I'm putting my hands out, and I'm gonna try to knock out Stipe, which ended up working better for DC.
Yeah,
I think uh, DC complained about the eye after the third round.
yeah.
What should have happened is a doctor coming in and checking on the eye.
That's what Hans Mollekant was saying. He was
Yeah,
saying that a doctor should have came in because that when they did the replay, even Stipe was like, "Oh shit, yeah, I definitely poked him." Right.
yeah,
So even Stipe was like, "Yo, like I definitely poked him." The ref saw it. Even the ref said it after he saw the replay. So
yeah.
and the replay was during the round, during between the rounds. So should have you think you're agreeing that the doctor should have came in and double checked the eye, correct?
Yeah, yeah, but I don't know if that's solely on Mark Goddard or if
It's
that's
not a Mark
that
Goddard problem.
if that's the doctor not being aware of what's going on. Because if DC is saying my eye, he poked me in my eye.
Yeah,
Um, but we
Goddard
already
should have.
but we already know in the second round, going into the third round, his eye was messed up.
Yeah,
So I don't know if because to me the eye wasn't the eye in the third round was the same issue as in the fifth round. To me, it looked the same. It looked exactly the same to where I know. Oh my God, he's his eye is hurt.
well, I will say this. At the beginning of the third round, we saw like just like the swelling, right?
Yeah,
And round 4 and 5, we saw a black mark closer towards the inner part of his eye, where the tear duct is at, right? Like
yeah,
here. And I think for me, that's an indication that there's something wrong. Like your
yeah,
eye shouldn't look like that. That
yeah,
just from someone who works in the medical field and just seeing things like that, and you could even attest to that too. Just seeing how eye injuries happen in this sport, that
yeah.
didn't look right. But again, like it's a fight, and like that,
He's getting
it's
punched in the
hard to
face.
tell. It's hard to tell whether that was real, like you said, really due to being, the accumulation of damage to the eye, or if
Yeah.
that was due to the eye poke. It's a combination of both, in my
I think
opinion.
yeah, I think so
It's a
too.
combination
And
of both.
and it's unfortunate. But I don't think it should take away from Stipe's win. I think the amount of work that Stipe did in this fight is incredible. Somebody brought it up in a group chat that I'm in. Who can take away from who can take this away from Stipe, and that's going to be really really hard. If this is the Stipe we're going to get from the future on, it's going to be really really hard because Stipe came in with such a great game plan of not only his footwork in the fight, not only going to the body, but controlling the wrist in the clinch, doing the best to control the wrist in the clinch, putting DC's back against the Cater in the clinch and hold him there to try to take a
Yeah,
break and also to run the clock out a little bit, which I thought was brilliant. Not
brilliant.
to not create activity for DC and to run the clock a little bit. Um, that's the small adjustments to the teep kick, so we don't really see the
The
head
head off
kick,
the head,
the head
yeah, the
kick,
head kick. Whew. But
which
I will
John
say
Jones
this:
took advantage of before, and that DC continues to do the same thing he did in the John Jones
he
fight.
he he
Dips it,
leans
yeah,
out. He dips the
yeah,
head to this side, and that left high kick is just there. It's
yeah,
just there. There's no. But with that being said, I will say this: Cormier made good adjustments in this
he
fight
did,
too. The
he did,
wrestling in the beginning, it wasn't just the wrestling engagement; it was the scramble.
yeah,
That it wasn't, Stipe. He knew that Stipe could be, Stipe is gonna as a wrestler. He's a bigger guy. I always say
yeah.
this: you're not gonna wrestle a guy like that for, you're not gonna pick him up and ragdoll him with the caliber that Stipe is. That's just not gonna happen, right? But it's how to beat him is to beat him at areas that he may not be familiar with or like comfortable with, which is the scrambles, which Cormier, you know, he may be better in. But again, you can't keep that wrestling for 25 minutes. But I
Yeah.
think that initiating that in the first round and getting it if it's there was really smart. But Stipe didn't overextend himself. So like, and
And
that's a bigger thing too.
I think now I think Stipe does prove that because again the thought process was the octagon was going to be in an advantage of DC because of the grappling and his ability to get in closer. He wouldn't have to waste as much energy to get going inside of Stipe. I think now this changes the perspective of okay, the strikers that need space, they usually that usually loves the space, like Israel Adesanya who fights next
Mhm.
month. I think it changes my perspective to now it's like, okay, if you have great footwork, you're gonna have great footwork regardless, depending on no matter what the cage.
I said on the preview, I said
Yeah,
that I didn't think that the small octagon would be that big of an issue. And
yeah,
the only reason why is because I think with a bigger octagon, you have to cover more distance in order to evade, right?
right,
And I think that with someone with good footwork in general, you're going to be
yeah,
able to evade regardless. What I really thought was that the smaller octagon was going to create pressure, and I think the pressure in the sense of like the mentality, like, oh, like I got to get him before he gets here, or like it's so much smaller now, I got to do this to make the get you second guessing. And
yeah.
that's what I think it really affects the more mental game as opposed to the physical game of the athletes. And that could be wrong too, right? Because some people love the smaller octagon, some people thrive off of it. We've been
Yeah.
seeing a lot of people really like it, and to be honest with you, this is what people are training in at the UFC facility in Las Vegas, a cage similar to that size. So I mean, if I'm being honest, I didn't see the smaller cage being that much of a bigger difference.
Mm.
But what it's proving, like you said, is that those with footwork are still able to carry out that footwork regardless of cage size. And
Yeah.
that's got to also be a mental aspect saying that I can do this regardless of the cage. Can my opponent keep up? So that
Yeah.
gives you a vote. That gives you a vote of confidence, in my opinion.
And to the viewer watching, we thank you for watching. Leave a comment in the section below and tell us what you think of UFC 240, 252. My God. Um,
Listen, that man is trying to get out of here to get the IHOP. Let's get him out of here, people. And with that
this is,
being said, UFC 252's main event was phenomenal. I think it was great. What do you think is next for? We'll start with Cormier. What do you think is next for Cormier? Then we'll go to and then we'll go to Stipe.
and this is just a hope for me. I hope DC retires.
I agree.
I do not need to see a DC fight again.
I think DC has done it all.
Yeah,
He's been a two division champ. He ruled the light heavyweight in the absence of John Jones.
yeah.
Put on what would be honestly one of the best fights at light heavyweight against John Jones that anyone's ever put against him. And aside from like Dominic Reyes and then the last ones, I think Oh wow, actually, Load Code said DC should have wrestled more. I
I agree.
think I think what was interesting about this is that the caliber of wrestler that DC is, he could get those takedowns, but at the risk of burning energy. And then risk of burning energy against a guy like Stipe, that would be rough. He could take
You
him to
said
the ground.
trying to beginning of the rounds. You know what? I think DC should. I think he should have initiated the clinch early. Like I think the idea of him putting his hands out early on and the eye poke happening, I think it prevented him from wanting to get inside in the clinch. And I think again
If
that was his biggest weapon.
Yeah, that's one of his greater assets, right? That like the way he fights and his style. So if you shut that down, he kind of has to go to a style that's not exactly caters to him. I think
Yeah,
with the wrestling, I think he could have wrestled more. I think there's a lot of points where he actually went for takedowns and like his trips are sneaky. There was
yeah.
one trip where he was put his back against the cage. Stipe put him back against the cage, and he
Mm,
almost caught a trip against it. I was like, yo, the
yeah.
wrestling pedigree again, phenomenal. The IQ in wrestling is phenomenal. But I don't think Stipe had the holes of being taken down or tripped too. I think that's a
Mm.
very big factor when you have two guys like this who can wrestle in that ability. I think if he were to wrestle, sure, but in the long run, I don't think that would have been better for him. But the wrestling should have been mixed up a little bit more. I agree with that.
I meant to say Loco says he looks so out of shape, and he also said that his dad bod looks worse than ever looked. That's interesting. I actually thought DC looked in the best shape of his career. I
I
thought he looked
think
really, really good.
I don't disagree with that. I actually agree with Tyree. I think actually in the fourth or fifth round he was the fresher fighter, and I
Yeah,
think if his eye wasn't messed up, he could have put it was if he had gotten with the hands up and with the amount of energy he had conserved during the third round, I
Yeah.
think he could have, he at some point he could have finished Stipe because he was putting it on Stipe in the fourth round. In my opinion, he put it on him.
Yeah. What question? Did you ever go in 2-2 going to the fourth round? I mean,
No,
going to the fifth round?
I had 3-1 only because of round
Okay.
three. Round three was the clinch. See, the issue is round one, right?
Yeah.
Stipe controlled the whole fight until the end of the round where he gets hit, but it wasn't like he fell back and went out. He got stunned, but went right back, went up to him, but there was no seconds left in the fight, right? So
Yeah.
you can't conclude. So that could be given to Cormier because of that moment,
Mm.
or with the control that was happening and with the higher volume put by Stipe, you could have given it to him. I gave it to Stipe, but it was such a hard round to give. But with that being said, 2-3 were definitely Stipe. Round 4 was definitely Cormier. Round 5, I give to Stipe only because of the clinch work. Other
Yeah.
than that, there was nothing else that decided that round to me because that round could have been a draw.
Yeah, I thought the second round, the first round, I think DC stole it with the late
So he's stunned.
yeah, the late stun by on Stipe. I thought round 2 he got hurt. I thought that was the point where I think the eye really messed up in the second round, and then the third round, the eye poke really messed DC up. And
Yeah, agreed.
I thought the fourth round, I thought DC did well, and I thought the fifth round, Stipe just had too much for him, and I just thought he was able to steal it from him. I thought
Which is
I had
interesting.
2-2. I had 2-2 going to the fifth round.
I told Errol, my brother obviously. I told him I was like best case scenario for Stipe 3-1. Actual judges 2-2.
Mm.
I only want load code said I only want to see DC win this fight because what Dana White said he would give us the trilogy with Jones, which is interesting, right? Because we would get a trilogy with Jones, but realistically, it's like that fight at heavyweight is so appealing, but does much change?
I'm glad Loco brought this up because
Yeah,
it brings us to the conversation of what's next for DC. And he says he needs to retire. I think DC needs to retire too.
he needs to retire.
I think there's nothing really left for DC. I don't want to see a John Jones versus DC too.
Not
We
three,
already seen it.
three.
Oh, sorry, 3. I don't want to see a third one. We've already seen what John Jones will do.
If you don't beat John Jones the first time, you don't beat him the second time. I can
I don't
guarantee that.
I don't think it changes that heavyweight, which we're going to talk
Nope.
about John Jones in a second. But I don't think pretty much it changes in the heavyweight. I think the style of John Jones and his ability to understand his opponents, especially in rematches, I think that's a huge issue for DC, and he's going to have a game plan already lined up off the second fight. And I think with DC, I think DC is a great commentator. I think he's a great ambassador for the sport.
Amazing.
I think he could be a great person to have in the office of the UFC.
I think
I think he can do a lot of good things for the fighters.
if because we know Joe Rogan is Joe Rogan's not going to be in the sport forever. We know that, right?
He wants out.
Joe Rogan wants out, but he wants to do it. He doesn't want it like, oh, I'm out, like I'm done. Joe Rogan wants to wean out, which is fair. I think if we're looking at the mind of DC, we're looking at the accolades he's done, his fight IQ in general when he calls fights, his ability to stay unbiased, even when he's talking about fighters from AKA, even talking about friends, his ability to stay unbiased. I think DC is without a doubt that next commentator. He's not Joe Rogan, right?
Yeah.
You were never going to get another Joe Rogan, only because Joe Rogan's not a fighter. I think that's what brings Joe Rogan from here to here, as well as his knowledge outside of the fight world that he brings. His knowledge outside of being a fighter that he brings to MMA. But with Cormier retiring officially, he becomes the next biggest announcer, or I guess analyst, in my opinion. And I think that role in its own right is going to be so much more rewarding because that's when he can fully reap the benefits of everything he's done.
And I also think like with Joe Rogan as the the person that's not a fighter but understands the sport. I think with DC he adds so much as a fighter and his ability to analyze a fight in the middle of a fight and be able to say to the viewer, okay, what's happening here, risk control. There's things that the average person would not understand, but he's bringing it to light. I think Joe Rogan does a good job trying to explain it, but I think DC does a better job in explaining it, and he's also funny.
He is. I think that having that knowledge of being a fighter makes a difference. I think just don't quote me, in the next 5 years, in the next 2 years with Corona and all that stuff, don't be surprised if DC either gets offered some type of role within UFC aside from being an announcer, or if he gets like how Matt Hughes was like that talent liaison or whatever.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if DC actually gets like an actual job like
I
that
agree.
with
I agree.
UFC. I think he's more, not only has he more than earned it, he's he's gotten the respect that he's
Yes,
deserved. That last night proved why he is without a doubt one of the greatest fighters to have ever walked in the octagon. And again,
I agree.
retirement has to happen. Retirement has to happen. But I think this is only the start. This is chapter two. And
Yeah,
chapter two can be so much more rewarding, in my opinion. He's got a
yeah,
baby on the way. He's
yeah.
got 2 kids already. I mean, the possibilities at this point are endless.
Yeah, I think DC has so much. I think he's bigger than the sport in
Yeah.
terms of right now.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
his role, and I think he's been able to grind through, fighting his career and going from Strikeforce, going to the UFC, the wars with John Jones, the wins and losses of, losing to John Jones and then winning against Anthony Johnson to become champion,
Yeah.
moving up to heavyweight to beat Stipe. He's done everything he can do, and he deserves all the praise in his UFC career. I think his next life, his next career is even better because I think he
Yeah.
has so much more to give to back to the sport that
All
it's more than UFC. It's more than fighting.
agreed. Groundwork was laid for during the fighting career for the
Yeah.
career after fighting. I agree. And then with that being said, Stipe Miocic, where do we feel he lies now? Because with a successful defense of
Yeah.
his title, this is now his. Not only has he's a two-time heavyweight champion, he's defended the belt 4 times now,
Yeah.
which is the most in UFC history. Right? We know this, and he already broke the number, but he's breaking records again. He's brought the accolade to here.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we want a healthy Stipe, so we may not get him fighting for a little bit longer. But what do you feel is next for his career?
So I see that people are talking about John Jones. The
Yeah,
thing about John Jones is John Jones talks about going to heavyweight almost every time. Like this is not something new. It's not something that he just coming out on Twitter and saying before. Like
yeah,
he's done this a lot,
he has.
for a number of years now. So like I think John Jones moving to heavyweight is imminent. I don't think it's necessarily now. I think what
No.
happens is Francis Ngannou deserves the next shot. And I think that's the fight that makes sense. I think Francis Ngannou is a star, and I think
Yes.
the UFC is incentivized to give Francis Ngannou the next fight. Um,
I just want to
I
bring something up. Last night, Dana said, if I say something, it gets done. And I was like,
not really, not really,
Dana,
not really.
you had to be like Jigga. I was like, Dana, like don't do that. Don't do that because like I'm not gonna bring examples, but I'm gonna just bring up one. He said Aljamain Sterling was the next, and
Yeah,
here we are.
yeah,
Here we
yeah,
are. My
yeah,
boy Aljo don't got it. He not fighting for the belt, so I don't know. Now, don't get me wrong. Dana has done some great things, but don't sit here and say if you say something, or maybe I'm paraphrasing, but I'm pretty sure he said something along the lines in the post fight conference. He was like, "Well, if I say it, I get it done," or like if I
yeah.
say it, I'm gonna do it. I'm like,
I don't know about that one.
Dana.
Loco says Jones and Ngannou. I definitely do
It's
think
Ngannou.
I
It's
definitely do
Ngannou.
think Ngannou. I think
It's
what can
Ngannou.
happen what can happen is John Jones either vacates the belt and waits for Ngannou and Stipe maybe by the summer. I think we'll have a winner by the summer, and then he'll finally fight in that international fight week.
Yeah.
Or he defends his belt against Dominic Reyes and then vacates the belt afterward if he wins.
I
Um,
see I see a Reyes rematch. I see it. I
I
see
don't.
it.
It's a one choice. I can honestly see John Jones sitting out the rest of the year, and
Oh,
then just and then
without a
just
doubt.
and then just wait because I think Stipe and Francis Ngannou could happen the earliest early next year. Let's say January,
March.
February. Let's say in January, February, March even. So like I could see that winner fighting John Jones in International Fight Week if the stars aligned. I think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I would. The only reason why I would put in a January is because it's too early, right? And then you have all
Yeah,
this time. I think with the time frame like March, right, where hopefully Corona is on its way of being, dismantled on some other fucking level. But
yeah,
with that being said, like March would be a perfect time to have a fight like that, right? Because that's when it starts to get a little more. The season changes. We're starting to see little differences here. I
yeah.
would love to see that. I would love to see that fight between what's it called, Ngannou versus Stipe. I would love to see Jones go up, but if Jones decides, which like you said, he's I don't want to say he's wish washy. I think he what do you call that? He teases the heavyweight because he knows he can do it.
I think he wants
But
the money. I
And
think I
that's
think he wants that bread.
and that's the thing. UFC, I don't think UFC is going to compromise till they're in a better position, and that's the thing. I think when the company is doing slightly better than what they want or project, given the whole crisis of COVID,
Yeah,
that's when the company will be like, okay, like we might be able to budge because they're not going to give him the money now. That's
yeah.
not going to happen.
I definitely do think that Jones can. The fight would make sense. We're talking about, let's say, July when International
Yeah.
Fight Week happens. I
Yep.
can definitely see Jones waiting or that heavyweight move happen when fans are there. I think that's a fan thing where fans are able to see John Jones moving the heavyweight.
Bump up, and that's what I'm saying. That's why January, yes, I could see it. You're right, but March later, where things are, let's see what the state of the world is, right? Because I
Yeah.
think for a fight like that, your greatest chance of getting the
That's a
money you
stadium.
want,
That's a
greatest
stadium.
video, viewership you ever had, the
Yeah,
greatest chance of filling those seats that on a spectacle has never been done before, is when everyone can come to that party. When
yeah,
everyone can come to that party, that's when you'll have your biggest showcase. And
yeah.
that's Jones versus the winner of Ngannou versus Stipe. But with that being said, that just the state of the world has to be figured out first.
Yeah, and I think we'll have a vaccine by next year,
Hopefully, hopefully,
early next year or
yeah,
close to March. But yeah, I definitely do think the John Jones fight makes sense in a crowd that move up to heavyweight. I think that makes sense with a crowd, a big crowd, and possibly a stadium. So I think
oh,
John Jones move up to heavyweight. I think that is such an attraction because now we get to finally see, okay, is he truly, and we talked about this earlier in the show,
Tyrese,
is
5 years,
John Jones
5 years in the
truly
making.
the baddest man of in the planet? And I
Five
think he is ready to show people, yeah,
five
I'm the
years in the
baddest guy on
making.
the planet.
5 years in the making. We wanted this ever since he came back and fought. He fought DC the second time.
Yeah,
We wanted this ever since he fought DC the second time. So, I mean, let's get it going.
yeah,
Let's get it
I
going.
agree. I agree.
Uh,
But yeah,
yes.
that's Stipe in DC. I hope DC retires, and Stipe, he has the next two fights for Stipe in this order. It looks like Francis
Ngannou,
Ngannou, which is a scary fight,
very scary fight.
in a big fight, and then you have John Jones potentially, which I think again that's two of the best heavyweight fights of all time.
Yeah.
A refreshed Francis Ngannou who looks better than ever, and then a John Jones move up the heavyweight. I think that's amazing.
Or hear me out. Hear me out.
Mm.
Hear me out.
But
Parallel universe. Let me tell you this. Stipe can't fight because he somehow gets injured. Stipe gets injured again. Something happens. Derek Lewis wins his next fight.
oh my god,
Then we get Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou for the interim heavyweight belt. Boom. I just put it out there.
alternate universe.
Alternate universe, Tyrese. It not only has this already happened, you have told me, you're like, damn, Elijah, how the fuck did you see that? We're gonna move on though. We're gonna move on. Keep that at the back. Turn around for me. Just turn your head. Keep it at the back of that head. Keep it at the back
Oh
of
my
your head. That
god.
skull right there in the back, that little back cusp. Keep it
Yeah.
there.
I
All
want to
right.
know what Loco said. He said John Jones is my favorite fighter, but I know his reign won't last forever. If it does, I will give it to him. A lot of recent fights have been close ones. You know what? You're not wrong, Loco. And I think John Jones at light heavyweight, he's facing the cream of the crop. He's had a tough fight against
Thiago.
Thiago Santos. He had a tough fight against Dominic Reyes. The thing I
He
would say about that is when John Jones is motivated and when John Jones has a game plan on you, it is going to be
It's a
tough.
different breed. It's a different breed.
I think Thiago Santos. I think Dominic Reyes. I don't know this, but I want us to expect that John Jones was not giving them the attention they deserve.
I will say this.
Especially when,
Thiago.
especially when on the Dominic Reyes one, we find out that he's been partying Super Bowl weekend the week before.
I'll say this: the Thiago fight. I'm not saying we got different ideas if he, all this other stuff, bullshit.
Yeah.
I'll say this: Jones, you could tell Jones purposely let himself take a lot of those leg kicks,
Yeah.
just to show about like what that's it's. This is
Your
it.
strike,
This is all you're gonna do.
your striking is not close to beating me.
You're striking. If striking again, if your striking is all you have, you're not gonna beat me.
Yeah,
And with Dominic Reyes, I think Jones was overwhelmed that first round. But
yeah,
once he got past the first round and made minor adjustments, he just stalked him down. He
yeah,
just stalked him down. And don't get me wrong, again, like and rewatching that fight, Dominic Reyes, there was a lot of rounds where he had moments like pop, 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 landing combinations, getting off
yeah,
the center line, cutting angles. But at the end of the day, the same thing continued to happen. Jones would still fire off and hit him. Jones would still push him back, and it
yeah.
just seemed like no matter what Reyes, it wasn't like Reyes was in trouble, and that's the biggest part. That's why it was really really close. But Jones just wasn't. Jones wasn't hurt.
And people like are negative towards it, but I think he outclassed him. I think in terms of what John Jones was able to do to Dominic Reyes, which is doesn't get the credit it deserves. I think Dominic Reyes came out like a house on fire, and then John Jones was able to put it on him, and I thought he just outclassed him in terms of just striking, and
The
able
House
to
on Fire
really
is a good analogy.
and,
That's a
and
good
just,
analogy.
and just really just took it to Dominic Reyes in a way where he stole rounds. He got takedowns, and I thought he just outclassed him, he outsmarted him in the fight. I think in the second fight, if they do fight again, I think John Jones have a better game plan, a better understanding of how to beat Dominic Reyes, and
Yep.
Dominic Reyes gonna have to make a lot of adjustments.
And that's the thing, right? When you fight Jones for a second time, you the assumption is everything you did right in the first fight, you have to mimic for the second fight.
Right,
But that alone just gets your foot in the door. That
right.
alone will not beat John Jones because John Jones has already prepared for what you had at what was your best.
And he
And
also
to be
pissed him
honest with
off.
you, you truly don't see Jones's best
Right.
right away. You don't. And I think the Hal Burning House is a great analogy because Jones slowly puts that fire out.
Right.
Jones slowly puts that, neutralizes that fire, and I think that's what he was able to do with Anthony Smith. I think that's what he
Yep.
was able to do with Thiago Santos. I think
Yep.
that's what he was definitely able to do with Alexander Gustafsson the second fight, and especially with DC DC the second fight. So again, if you don't beat John, this is my theory, and we have always talked about this theory together, Tyrese. If you do not beat John Jones the first time, if you do not surprise him the first time and beat his ass, there's just the second fight just it may not go your way. Like there's a the risk, the possibility goes to this.
Yes. And again, you piss him off. You say, oh well, he almost beat you the first time. Now he can beat you the second time. I think that motivates. That we talk about motivation. That motivates John Jones to like, okay, now I take care of business. Now I get him out of there. And we've seen it with DC. We've seen it with Alexander Gustafsson. And I
Those
think
two fights alone.
if the Dominic Reyes fight John Jones again, I think we may see it again.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But with that being said, we'll move on to the co-main event of the evening, which
Yeah.
which ended earlier than most people thought. We predicted that these guys were I predicted that these guys would kind of neutralize each other, but I think you predicted that one. I predicted Cheeto was going to come up on top, and you predicted Cheeto was going to come up on top because we're fans of both, but we know that Cheeto doesn't really necessarily get the fair attention he deserves a lot, and he's a dangerous fighter. And so we both said that Cheeto, but I said that he would, just decision him. And you say he would finish it. He did. Cheeto Vera ended up finishing the fight. He is. John Jones truly, he puts John Jones. I'm sorry to leave Cheeto because he's my boy, but John Jones truly, it's right. Tyrese is right. It's a house on fire. And what John Jones does is he puts that fire out. He silences that fire. It's like no other person you've seen before. And it's at a pace that's like you think is not really going to affect you, but then it's like, a minute later, it's like, oh shit, wow, he's still doing this.
Yeah.
Like I'm throwing the best of what I got, and it just don't change. It just don't change.
But
I'm sorry.
Tito Vera, I thought there's not much to analyze here except for the fact of go back and watch that fight. Chito Vera did I don't know if it wasn't a kick.
It was a calf kick.
It was a calf kick, but after that you see Sean O'Malley take a step back and his foot buckled.
Yes. So Sean O'Malley, I believe, is the second. It was second round. Am I bugging?
First round.
First round. Sorry. So in the first round, a lot of Sean O'Malley's stance is sideways, almost similar to a taekwondo, right? So he's in and out, in and out. In order to be able to do that, your foot has to stop and come back, stop and come back. His foot ended up rolling.
Yep.
His foot ended up rolling like this. And what happens when you do that is you roll that ankle and it hurts. Possible ankle breakage, possible ligament, a lot of things that could go wrong in that one situation. Similar to his fight with Andre Sukumail. But what was interesting in this fight is that Chito Vera was attacking the leg the same way O'Malley was doing those lower leg kicks too. And
Yeah.
so it was interesting. This is in my opinion, this is similar to like the whole kind of Carlos Condit, right? It's like Tyron Woodley was kicking his leg, boom, leg blows. And that
Yeah.
it's just something that happens. So there's really not, like you said, there's not much you can say in a fight like this, but there shouldn't be anything taken away from Chito Vera because
No,
the
no.
adjustment made it
Yeah.
Chito Vera in the first minute of the fight is what impressed me, right? Chito Vera he bit the feints so early, and I think that's where O'Malley has phenomenal ability to make people bite on the feints. But once Chito Vera stopped,
Yeah.
he had the fight. There wasn't much that I mean, this could be me. There just wasn't much that O'Malley was offering in those exchanges after he stopped biting on all those feints.
Yeah, and with the and I see people taking this away from Chito Vera and saying, oh, it was O'Malley messing up his ankle or his foot that gave Chito Vera. No, the leg kick of Chito Vera hurting and making Sean O'Malley roll his ankle or roll his foot against himself. That was the issue. Chito Vera had a great game plan to attack the leg of Sean O'Malley, and that's what hurt him.
A lot of people don't understand how fights work, right? Because you're taking damage over an accumulation of time.
Yep.
So taking those leg kicks or those cut kicks affects a nerve that is there, and that nerve can either, the nerve is going. So if you get hit there enough, the nerve kind of locks up. That nerve stops working. So for him to have that movement, it's finally like boom, boom, boom. And he rolled on the leg because the nerve wasn't working. And that's how a fight works. It's not just that he rolled his ankle. Like, things like that happen. Or he could have came into with that injury. You don't know with those kind of things. And the fact that he signed up for the fight and in knowing that and showing up the day of, you got to prepare for all those angles. And I'm sure he did. I'm sure he made the right necessary accommodations if he did have an injury. But bottom line is, Chito Vera got it done. Flathead Politics says, fellas, happy to see you guys. I'm happy to see you too, man. It was great having you on last time. We're talking about Marlon Vera versus Sean O'Malley, and you know what was actually pretty impressive? The elbow landed when O'Malley went down.
Yeah,
I thought
it was a good stoppage. Honestly,
great stoppage because O'Malley wasn't going to give anything. He wasn't going to offer anything else.
No, and
I thought anything else.
I thought the elbows of Chito Vera. I thought he caught Sean O'Malley. I think if it could have continued, I think he would have hurt him with the ground and pound as well.
Agreed. It would have been unnecessary.
Yeah. And I thought Chito Vera again proved that you can't sleep on him. You cannot sleep on Chito Vera. I think he's somebody that we talk about could potentially be a top 10, top 5 competitor in the bantamweight division.
I think a few episodes ago, maybe I wanted to. I think within the next year, he's going to be top 5.
You have
at bantamweight, he's going to be top 5. A lot of people don't understand how dangerous it is. When you moved up to fight Yasong Dong at 145, he won that fight.
Yes,
he won that fight.
He did.
He won that fight, and I liked him at 145 because he took crazy hits that would hurt people. Flathead Politics says, excellent analysis always, gentlemen. Thank you so much, man. We sit here and watch, and we argue a lot, and we go back and forth, but this is something we love. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch and tell us how much of a good of a job we're doing. But no, again, Chito Vera is good. Chito Vera is good, and I can only hope for the best for him. Tyrese, you do matchmaking. I do matchmaking. Who would you like to see Chito Vera fight next in bantamweight? Would you like me to pull up the rankings? How do you want to do that?
Actually, you know what? I think Chito Vera should fight Merab. Help me out here.
Really?
Yeah, I think that's a fight to make. I think Merab wanted the Sean O'Malley fight because Sean O'Malley is money. And by the way, did you see the promo they did for Sean O'Malley?
They gave that, they pushed him. The
UFC was ready to push Sean O'Malley to the moon. I'm talking about. They had Stephen A. Smith, who does First Take and stuff like that for ESPN. Great reporter and great entertainer. Talking about how he compared Sean O'Malley to Ronda Rousey. He compared Sean O'Malley to Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens in the NFL.
Yeah.
He compared Sean O'Malley to Russell Westbrook. Like he put all these keywords, names that casual fans will look at and say, oh, he's like that guy and Ronda Rousey. Like, those are small things that they really tried to do to prop up Sean O'Malley, which I think is brilliant work by the UFC, and I think is smart. But Sean O'Malley losing it kind of hurts that a little bit. I think, I hope a little bit more attention is paid to Chito Vera, because I think Chito Vera is somebody, like we say,
Yeah.
is going to be a challenger possibly for that title in the future because of what he can do.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think this hurts Sean O'Malley all that much, because I think people are going to run with this narrative that it was the foot that hurt O'Malley, not Chito Vera.
Oh, 100%. They're gonna roll with it because you know what? He at the end of the day, he's still marketable. He's a young guy.
Yeah.
He's got talent. He's got amazing finishes over good fighters.
Mm.
I, why let this be the end all say all to his career? His career is far from over. Correct. So
Yes.
looking at this, we have to see where he goes in terms of getting back onto the table at post injury. That's
Yeah.
what, and this is going to be the issue now because now not only is he going to be out from injury from prior and being banned twice, or I guess his extension being, being banned and his extension being brought further, but now he's
Yeah.
facing another injury. And so now he gets into this kind of conversation where it's like he's good, but will he actualize his full potential because he has injuries that are plaguing him from being, from getting back as soon as possible and being consistent as a fighter? That's gonna be the talk. It's not gonna be whether or not he's gonna be, he's the next guy anymore. It's gonna be, can he be consistent and stay less injury prone?
And to the viewers watching, we love you. Thank you for joining us. Please comment in the live chat below and tell us
Please,
what
we like an active show. We like an active show. If you disagree, let's talk. That's what we're here for.
and also hit the like button and subscribe, please. And share.
Yeah,
But yeah, I thought with Chito Vera again. I think he's somebody people should recognize. I hope he gets pushed a little bit more too. And for Sean O'Malley, honestly, I think this is not the end of him, but
No.
it does raise questions whether his health can sustain his UFC career.
Agreed. I just want to make a point here. So, with John Dodson losing to Merab Dvalishvili, he lost to John Dodson's 12. So I'm assuming Merab's going to take the number 12 spot. And then with O'Malley being 14, I'm assuming Sean O'Malley moves now to 15 with my boy Chito Vera coming up in 14. I do like the fight with Merab. I like that fight a lot. I would like to see a fight though with maybe like a guy like Rob Font. I think Merab, a guy like Merab fighting dangerous strikers gives him that confidence for that high level people. So I like to see Merab or Chito fight a guy like Rob Font because Rob Font's a very dangerous man. He's very talented and he's good. Jimmy Rivera may need a dance partner soon. We could see that. Who knows?
Isn't Jimmy Rivera moving to featherweight?
Really?
I thought so. I thought his last fight was at featherweight.
Nah, let me double check. But you good? Finish up.
Yeah, I thought his last fight was at featherweight. I think he fought somebody from bantamweight division at featherweight. But yeah, I think Chito Vera. I think he deserves. Maybe.
Oh, it was short notice. I think it was short notice because he fought Cody Stamen.
Yeah.
He fought Stamen on short notice at featherweight because it was just like a short fight. His person dropped out. That's what happened.
Yeah. I do think that Chito Vera versus Merab makes sense, or if you want to do Chito Vera versus John Dodson, that could also be an interesting one. Who else in their rankings?
So we're just gonna go from the top guy all the way down, if that's fine with you. Just give me one moment. My computer's uploading it now. So we have obviously champ Petr Yan. Number 1 spot is Marlon Moraes. Number 2 spot is Aljamain Sterling. Number 3 is Cody Garbrandt. Number 4, Corey Sandhagen. Number 5, Pedro Munoz. Number 6, Jose Aldo. Number 7, Jimmy Rivera. Number 8, Rafael Assunção. Number 9, Cody Stamen. Number 10, Rob Font. Number 11, Dominic Cruz. Number 12, John Dodson. Number 13, Song Yadong. Number 14, Sean O'Malley. And number 15, Merab Dvalishvili.
A lot of fighters. Los Code says a lot of fighters saw a chink in his armor. You know what? It's not. You're not wrong in that. That focus Sean O'Malley is gonna be an issue.
That and the feints. If you don't if you learn to get past the feints, that's kind of where it's over. I wowould say, I wonder how Corey Sandhagen is gonna. I wonder who he's gonna fight next.
Corey Sandhagen, I believe he's fighting Marlon Moraes, if I'm not mistaken.
I can see that. I can see that matchup. That's a good fight.
He is. He's fighting Marlon Moraes. I did the article on that. MMAscene.com. If you want to check it out. But he's fighting Marlon Moraes. You know what? I think they're trying to get. I could be wrong here, but I think they're trying to give Rafael Assunção the young guns.
That's what seems to be happening. Because he's a lot of people think he's a gatekeeper, but he's not,
Yeah,
and
I
that's the issue.
I could see Chito Vera fighting Rafael Assunção.
It's a good fight.
I could definitely see that.
It's a good fight. That's a good fight. I can see Merab also fighting a guy like Cody Stamen, who doesn't have an opponent right now. So, like, I think with the bantamweight open, with Triple C out, I think it provides a lot. But you know who's coming back soon?
If you say TJ Dillashaw, man, I'm with
TJ Dillashaw. That man, when he comes back, it's a wrap. That's all I'm saying.
Are you sure about that?
Positive. I'm absolutely positive. When he comes back, he's gonna go on a tear. Hit the first fight, maybe a finish, and then the second fights. Huh?
EPO and all.
EPO, I don't think he's gonna test positive again. I hope not. I really hope not. That's TJ Dillashaw was out of that one as the greatest bantamweight champion. So
Cody Garbrandt was telling us all this before, and we just took it for granted.
Hey man, I don't recall that. Moving on. Tyrese, are there any other fights?
I will say this also.
What?
Look out for Frankie Edgar, because I think we talked about this before with Frankie Edgar in the UFC.
He's fighting Pedro Munoz.
The UFC loves Frankie Edgar. I could totally see Frankie Edgar beating Pedro Munoz possibly, and then going straight to a title shot. It would not surprise me.
Oh, Tyrese. Oh, what is this in my back pocket?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
The UFC loves Frankie Edgar. They love giving Frankie Edgar opportunities. I love Frankie Edgar too. I don't think Frankie Edgar deserves all the opportunities in the world just off his name. But again,
he's great.
That fight next week is this week is really important, because if Frankie Edgar goes in there and just destroys or runs through Pedro Munoz, I can see the UFC saying, you know what, Aljamain Sterling, we know you're the right person, and we know that we said we're gonna give you the fight, but I'm sure gonna give it to Frankie Edgar.
If he demolishes him, if Frankie Edgar demolishes, spectacular fashion, first round domination or 5-round domination, I could see him fighting Aljamain Sterling, because Aljamain Sterling called for that fight when he first got the bantamweight, and then that could be the #1 title contender. Like you said, Frankie Edgar's a guy that you can put in those smaller weight classes. He's a guy you could just insert maybe top 5, get 1-2 fights tops, fight for a belt,
or just one fight and just fight for the belt, like Jose Aldo.
He dropped a heavyweight, fought Charles Oliveira, and then fought one more time for the belt, or he fought Charles Oliveira, and I think he fought one more time, and then got the Aldo fight. Bottom line is, it's possible. Tyrese, are there any other fights on this card that you could say you enjoyed, or there were fights that piqued your interest, or fighters?
I think a mention should be made to what's his name? Danielle Pineda beating Herbert Burns. That was a big upset. Yeah, I think that was a big upset. I thought he looked really, really good. I thought him being able to escape Herbert Burns' back take against the cage, I thought that was masterful. I thought and him coming back to the UFC and being able to beat Herbert Burns, who has kind of been the person that they're looking at as potentially being a not a star, but being somebody to look out for.
A force in featherweight.
Yeah,
he was a featherweight.
I thought it was lightweight.
Let me double check.
I thought it was a lightweight fight, but I think he is somebody that the UFC was looking at as
featherweight.
The featherweight, okay, the little brother, big brother, Gilbert Burns and Herbert Burns. They look kind of like that aspect of it, and I thought Danielle Pineda really not hurt the UFC plans a bit, but kind of just showed that
how tough he is.
There's levels to this, and how tough he is. Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize Daniel Pineda was actually in the UFC a while ago, and then he left. Had some really good fights outside of promotion. He fought in PFL. He tested positive, but it wasn't for steroids. I forgot what it was, but he was a lot of 2 of his fights were overturned. But Daniel Pineda, he fought catchweight first off, so that was interesting. One, what was impressive about Daniel Pineda is that he grappled. He took him down at one point, did he not? He took him down, and I was like, wow, you're really going to engage with a guy who's that dangerous. 2, Herbert Burns is unrelenting. Does not stop. And I think for a lot of people in the division, that's going to be an issue. But with a guy like Daniel Pineda, if you have similar skill sets like that, it won't be. So I think that was a good fight. I would like to bring up Jairzinho Rosenstruck versus Dos Santos. That fight ended how we thought. We
Yep.
either had Dos Santos outclassing him for 3 rounds straight, or Rosenstruck knocking him out just from the power alone. And so that ended fine. Jim Miller and Vince Pichel. That was a good fight, in my opinion. I thought that was Vince Pichel, really strong dude at lightweight. He looked really impressive. He's usually at featherweight, but he bumped up for this fight, so I thought that was good. And then who else? Verna Jandiroba versus Billy Tarek. This is someone to look out for in the women's strawweight division, because not only does she have, she's a former champion in Invicta. She has the hands, but her jiu-jitsu is just good, good. And she's only lost to the former champ. She's I think she's like 3 fights in UFC, and she's won 2 out of her last 3. So I'm excited to see where she goes from here.
She also lost to Brianna Van Buren, which you can go see my archive interview with Brianna Van Buren as well.
Brianna Van Buren, one solid striking, fucking solid striking, yeah.
But I with just speaking back on the heavyweight division, and we talk about Stipe, we talk about DC. Honestly, the how it looks, I think we could see Jazier Rosenstruck versus a Alexander Volkov. I think that fight makes sense.
Strikers.
And I could see a Derek Lewis. We talked about Derek Lewis earlier. Derek Lewis versus a Curtis Blades.
That's probably gonna happen.
Yeah, I think that has a high probability of happening. And if Derek Lewis could somehow get past Curtis Blades, then your parallel universe that you brought up, which again, you may get a Derek Lewis fighting for a title soon. Which again, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it, but
the way the world works today, we didn't see this shit happening with Corona. Boom. This is everything and all things under the sun is possible. And a lot of people still forget you have guys like Cyril Gane in the division. You have guys like Walt Harris. You have these younger fighters who can make a name. So you never know.
And John Jones is licking his chops and just thinking about what he is going to do at heavyweight.
Yeah, that's it. So Tyrese, overall at the end of cards, we like to go ahead and give a grade. Yep. What would you give this card?
I would give it a solid B. Maybe B plus. I thought it was a good card. I gotta be honest with you, the John Dodson and Merab fight kind of put me to sleep a little bit. Maybe it was a long day.
They were yelling during. I thought it was a good fight.
I may have put me to sleep a little bit. And then the Herbert Burns fight kind of woke me up a little bit, and everything else besides that was really, really good.
The first round was slow.
I would say a B or B plus.
I'm gonna go B plus, and the reason why is because I think when we look at the fight card as a whole, 252, we got a lot of good performances. We didn't get a lot of finishes, right? But we got a lot of good. Actually, we did. We got a lot of the main event had a lot of finishes. I think it was like out of the 5 fights, 3 were finishes. But what we got, I think we got a lot of people who were just like technically sound in a lot of their fights, and I think that was the impressive part, like displaying the technical ability. Like Stipe Miocic and Cormier, without a doubt, was one of the best fights of the year. I don't know if it is the best fight of the year. I can't say that because the year's not done, but it was one of the best fights of the year. Marlon Vera, I wish that fight went longer. I just wish that fight went longer, and I wish what happened didn't happen, so that way we could really get the full spectrum of those 2 gentlemen's ability. But other than that, I'm gonna go B plus. I'm gonna go B plus.
Flat politics. Give me your grade for the show. Low code.
Low code too, please.
C plus.
What?
You know what? Low code. I like you.
Wow.
It's you know what? I can see where he's coming from, because it's not like it's the best fight card of the year. And I'm glad he brought up. I'm glad he said a C plus because one of the things the UFC was saying and Dana White was saying, and again I have no issue with the UFC or Dana White. It's business, but they were saying that this fight is trending more than the UFC 244, which was Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz, and we were there for that fight.
We were there.
And this, I was starting to doze off. Yeah.
It was the first round was just like, what are you guys doing? But I think the end of the second and the third round got better. B minus, that's fair. I'll go B minus before I go C plus.
I'm not mad at Loco, because I honestly. You know what? They're saying that this was trending as UFC 244. We were there for UFC 244. We were
for UFC 244.
Yes, we were. it is nowhere close to UFC 244. Next, in fact, if you go to YouTube, which again, YouTube numbers, it's hard to really predict anything, but like if you look at like the press conference of UFC 244 compared to UFC 252, and then just all the numbers of UFC 254 and how much the viewership were for it, it is nowhere close.
You mean the viewership as like the amount of views on like the bottom of the video? Well,
yeah,
you have to take into consideration
in terms of press conferences, in terms of post fight, in terms of like the highlights. It was just way more UFC 244.
I'm going to go ahead and agree with you. Yes, that the viewership then would be higher, but with also with the amount of time that's passed since that event, viewership goes up too because people are watching videos. But I disagree with. I kind of disagree with Dana saying that this is like the most trending because that baddest belt was like that was the thing. Like the baddest man, that was like wow. And then you had the Rock. Come on, you throw the Rock in there. That's exponential. So.
And I don't believe Paris Hilton was watching UFC. I seen the little Twitter. You have the little box.
Tweets.
I do not believe Paris Hilton was watching UFC. I may be wrong here. I do not believe it.
Paris Hilton, would you like to come on the show and defend yourself?
I think some text messages were made to say, "Hey, talk about UFC 252," which is not a bad thing if it was. I think it's a business move.
Press.
But I definitely do think this is not on the same level of UFC 244 or the Khabib and Dustin Poirier. Yeah, I don't think those numbers in terms of viewership and how much people were paying attention to and the hype behind it are the same as UFC 252.
Yeah, I agree. You also UFC Khabib versus Poirier was international too. You have to take into account that it was just bigger than the sport at that moment.
It was also Khabib's first fight back since the whole Conor McGregor thing too.
Yeah. So yeah, all in all, okay. So load code said C+. That's fair. Argument understandable. Tyrese said B+. Sorry, B-. We're gonna go with that. So and so did Flat Politics said B-. A B might be more. B might be more realistic. Let's just say that. So I think that's more realistic for me. But again, great fight. I'm gonna watch the Stipe fight again. I am gonna watch. C++. Sorry, C++ was cold loaded. Flathead Politics B-. Again, that's what we said.
Yeah, I'm not mad at it at all.
Tyrese, any closing remarks?
No. All I will say is that this fight, don't take this away from Stipe. I think the eye pokes, it played a part, but I think Stipe's game plan and what he did in the fight was the big issue. Why DC lost the fight. I think DC should retire. John Jones, we'll see what happens with him. And I honestly think that this may not have been the best card of the year, but that's solid fights, and I'm super excited to see what the UFC does next. The UFC this year, despite the COVID-19 thing, has had a phenomenal year in terms of fights.
They have been able to do what is impossible for other organizations. So again, I credit them for what they've done. They've done a great job, and I'm only looking forward to what the rest of the year will offer. We still have great fights for the rest of the year. We have amazing fights for the rest of the year. With Justin Gaethje, Khabib, we don't have the location for Adesanya versus Kosovo, but we have a date. Then we also last night. I'm almost positive it's either Abu Dhabi or you think it's Fight Island again?
I think so. I think it's Fight Island because I think I seen somewhere. I think it was MMA Junkie. I want to credit them. MMA Junkie did a report saying that they think that Dana White talked about how Fight Island's going to be a month.
Yeah,
it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks. So I think if they were to do a Fight Island, it would put Adesanya versus Costa, who again Adesanya's from Australia. Costa,
Auckland, New Zealand.
Oh, sorry, Auckland, New Zealand.
Sorry, I think it's Auckland.
Costa is from Brazil, right?
Yep.
He trains out of Brazil, and then
I think he trains here because he trains with Henry Cejudo's team.
Okay. And then we have Khabib, who is coming from Russia, who is not coming to the United States. So I can definitely see them having UFC 253 and UFC 254 back to back on Fight Island. Because I think that would make sense for the Khabib fight, and that would make sense for the Adesanya fight, which is September 26th, right?
Yeah.
So if I could definitely see them doing a month with Adesanya and Costa, and then Khabib and Gaethje all on the same fight island.
I agree. It
makes sense.
And then
it makes sense.
And then you have the possibility of you have the possibility of Masvidal fighting Edwards at some point. You have Tyron Woodley fighting Colby. Then you have the possibility of Kamaru Usman defending his belt before the end of the year, possibly in November, December. Come on.
Sidebar. I know we're supposed to end the show, but
supposed to end. We gotta get you. We gotta get you that IHOP. That's the goal.
Listen, it's 12 o'clock now. I don't but Brian Ortega versus Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie. That's
a big fight.
That's a big fight. I'm not so crazy about it on a date because it's the same night as Lomachenko versus Lopez on ESPN. So they're gonna be competing against that card, which against Lomachenko on ESPN for free is a problem.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
We'll see.
But that's all for UFC 252. We thank you, Flat Politics. We thank you, Loco, for the show and watching it. We thank you for all the viewers who watch the show. Thank you for supporting us. If you like what you see, please subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment on what you thought of the show, and we would love to hear back from you guys.
Everybody be safe, be healthy. Tyrese, thank you for having me on the show again.
Most definitely. Signing off, my name is Tyrese Simon.
Roger Jones.
This has been a UFC 252 recap. Goodbye, guys, and stay safe.